Hello friends. So here it is. This is Bandit Country is the name of the chapter, which is chapter 11. This is the 5th part of that chapter. And of course it's the book A Look in the Dark. Danny and Carol are actually at their accommodation up near Castle Derg in County Tyrone. The bed was more comfortable, and after the ample evening meal, a little television, the Greens went to their bedroom. In bed they had a short conversation about the new involvement of Sir Richard Claymore in the investigation, him now being very directly active. Soon Danny was sleeping the peaceful sleep of the tired and contented. Carol, though, lay awake for a long time. She had concerns, and was wondering if they were endangering themselves more than was wise, in a hostile environment where an English stranger needed a good reason for being around. If he was not going to look mighty like an undercover agent of the British security forces, it all seemed more intense now they were in the Castle Derg area. Where did she sleep? Carol entered fitful sleep and had more than one unpleasant nightmare. A hearty breakfast had them fit for the day's bird watching, as they supposed, and they were in the car and driving back into Castle Derg by 9:30. Carol gave Danny directions through the intricate web of roads near the border toward the address of one Michael O'Connor. The rolling hills between Castle Derg and the village of Claddy were a mixture of green farmland and boggy areas, reaching a higher and flatter area that had a fair portion of bog. Carol pointed out the farm that seemed to be Mr. O'Connor's. First of all they drove past on down the Tyrone road, and then pulled into a wider opening where they would not obstruct the constricted way on the narrow road. As they got out of the car, Danny took in the strangeness of their location. Almost a different planet. Miles of bogland with just the odd green patch close to the scattered houses. The Sperrin Mountains on the horizon reaching from Tyrone into County Derry were dark and foreboding, and though the sun was shining on the boggy land there was tension in the air. Danny thought the desolation and silence beautiful, but he had a feeling that this land held secrets that it was best to be ignorant of. Somehow this place seemed to have the untamed splendour of a tigress. Even the stone chap calling from a nearby bush did not give him a feeling of real peace. They carried their binoculars, and essential to bird watching, but Carol had to ignore her doubts about the wisdom of this. As they walked back down the road, they stopped to watch a curlew as he parachuted down into the bog, sounding out its bubbling call and declaring a patch as belonging to it. Slowly, over 10 minutes, they walked back, stopping often to watch the birds, and finally reaching the track with the name Crawley on a stone against one of its high sphagnum-covered banks. Carol smiled at Danny and attempted to hide the tension in her eyes. They sat for a few moments on the bank watching the curlews again, that seemed to be nesting in abundance all over the seemingly barren region. A curlew call in the distance seemed to emphasise the loneliness of the Tyrone area. Carol said that it seemed like the desperate call of one lost, but she knew that her view was coloured by her uneasy feelings. On another day, in a different place, she had described the same cry as being like a child at the fun fair. Her mood was not one of gaiety here and now. At Danny's suggestion they started to walk up the lane toward the farmhouse, a slight rise from the road. The Ordnance Survey map gave the height of the farmhouse as 800 feet above sea level. Danny commented that it was not so much Emerald Isle but more Bronzewing, yet fascinating for all that. Danny was now finding that the constant curlew calls and the strange beauty of it was relaxing him. Maybe he was forgetting why they were here. He commented on the fact that the road they had walked along was very narrow and would be a problem if two tractors met. Carol said it wouldn't be a problem because the two drivers would be looking for a yarn anyway. Neither of them had commented on the slogan painted on the tarmac they had walked along. P-I-R-A, Peace with Justice, a common slogan at the time of Provisional IRA. With her binoculars, Carol had picked out the British Union Jack flying on Tallywhisker Orange Hall, not more than a mile away, and remembering that the map put the disputed Irish border just a few stone throws away over the fields, Carol knew that they were probably in a place where the two communities tolerated each other, but where feelings ran high and violence was not unknown. Had she heard gunfire, it wouldn't have surprised her that much. Poor Dan, she thought, he hasn't got a clue. The farm track was potholed as they walked along it. The banks became higher, so they couldn't see over the top of them. Carol commented on the stupidity of a line on a map that makes half a bog Irish and the other half British, and Danny told her that her mother would have her life for a statement like that. Carol's laugh eased her tension a little bit, and as they came around the bend in the track it branched in two directions. To the right was a house called Cranley, where O'Connor lived. To the left was a short track into a field. Carol was reminded of a certain Robert Frost poem, The Road Not Taken. I took the one less travelled by, and that made all the difference. Carol stood with Danny, not sure which track to take. Did I ever tell you the story about my mother and me on the road coming up from the south near Newry in the way? Carol never finished her sentence. On the less bumpy track that led to the house, a young man was closing a gate. "How you doing?" he called in an almost accusing tone of voice. "What are you doing?" would have been a more appropriate expression as far as fitting the way it was said. "Fine. How you doing yourself?" Carol was unfazed by the tone of voice, but Danny felt a tightening in his stomach. Carol continued, "It's not a bad day." The young man smiled, but his keen blue eyes had already taken in the binoculars, and up here on the Irish border they were a suspicious object to be wearing round your neck. "Are you walking?" "Aye, just a wee walk. We're watching the birds." "Well, there's plenty of them up here." Nobody came up here watching birds, he was thinking. "We were pleased to see the curlews. We never see any in part of England where we live." "But you're not English." "No, true Tyrone girl, but my husband's English." Carol thought it best to break the ice before a man's West of England accent cut in. "Not too many English people come up here to watch the birds. They would think it a bit risky in view of the troubles and all." "Never really thought about it. I'm from Dungannon. Life has to go on, troubles or not. I was in this area before." "Got friends up here, do you?" "No, just the birds." "Oh, why, the birds." There was a slight malice as an undercurrent in the friendly exchange. Then he altered the course. "Would you like to see a hen harrier? For I could show you one, so I could." Danny had to join in now. "Would you have the time?" "Up here, friend, time's a different thing. What we don't do today we might do tomorrow, and what we don't do tomorrow we probably won't do at all. Come on, I'll show you hen harriers if you desire to see them." "That's very kind of you. Look, I'm Danny Green, and my wife here, she's Carol." "Aye, well, I'm David Blaney." He led them along the track that turned toward the house called Cranley. He explained that the ample and fairly modern two-storey house was his uncle's, and he lived up here with his mother's brother. Much of the bogland around them belonged to his uncle. His uncle Michael was a bachelor, he explained, and as he was a bit lonely up here, he stayed a fair bit with him and helped on the farm. Danny expressed some comments about how hard it must be to farm in this kind of environment, but Davy explained that his uncle dealt a bit in this and a bit in that. That probably explained the parts of cars and tractors scattered behind the house, and it also explained why Danny and Carol were here in these highlands of the Tyrone-Donegal border. Of that Davy had no suspicion, but he did have other thoughts about the unusual visit of the Greens. As a breeze carried Davy's breath in her direction, Carol caught the strong smell of Irish whiskey. "Nice house," Carol said in a complimentary tone which disguised the accusations she felt her words implied. The wind was blowing a little cooler, and both of the Greens wondered where they were being led. The young man led them between a pile of car wheels and some peat, round the back of a barn and through a gate. Crossing the surprisingly grassy field of cattle and observing the warning to watch where they walked, Danny was worrying about where Uncle Michael was just now. So, a bit tense, but it gets worse, believe me, in the closing part of this chapter, which I will be posting soon. It's very chilly here right now. The autumn seems to be turning into the winter fast. I hope it's nice where you are. Bye for now, my friends. Love to one and all. Bye.